Keita Ibuki's mother passed away in a road traffic accident not too long ago, and now he is living alone, although his childhood friend Akane Sano does help him out. His mother's death still troubles him to this day, and one evening while on the way home, he comes across someone that looked exactly like her mother, standing waiting for the train to arrive. The next day at school, his classmate Risa Yamada tells him how she and her friend came across someone that looked exactly like her too at the concert yesterday. Keita puts on a serious tone and warns her to be careful of an accident. Risa laughs it off, amazed that Keita believed in the recent rumors about Doppelganger. That evening, Keita is on the way home alone again. While eating at the regular ramen stall, he meets a hungry, odd-looking girl while talking about Doppelganger. It was a term referring to how there are two others that resemble oneself. If one was to see one of them, then it means one may soon meet their death. That was what happened to his mother, and that was why he believes in it. However, the girl corrects him, claiming that Doppelganger was just a made-up story. What really existed was the doppelganger system, which is to keep the life energy on Earth Terra in balance. Each person is divided into two others. The strongest is known as the root, and the weaker two are known as the subs. The subs are terminated for some reason or the other, such as an illness or accident, then their Terra energy absorbed by the root. Before the girl could finish the ramen, a largely built man approaches her and smashes his baseball bat mercilessly into the side of her head. Both the stall owner and Keita try to help her, but he was too strong. Eventually, the girl gets up, upset that the man threw away her ramen bowl. She fights, and a fury of attacks are exchanged. After winning the battle, the girl apologizes for getting them involved and introduces herself as Kuro Madsatsumatama. Before Keita could ask her what that meant, Kuro rushes off, leaving only the words that she is off to kill her older brother. Returning home, Akane was preparing dinner, even though Keita didn't want her to care for him, but she insists. She had noticed that he's been keeping his distance from people since the death of his mother and friends because he feels it was him that brought misfortune to anyone he was with. A news report tells of his classmate Risa's death. The following day, flowers were placed on Risa's desk. Keita rushes out of the classroom, running off to somewhere isolated to cry out in sadness, but things weren't going to end there. As he made his way home, he meets his next-door neighbor Mayu smiling at him. She tells him how she saw someone that looked just like her earlier during the day before walking out onto the road just as the green man on the light appears. Keita tries to stop her, but a truck comes crashing into her, dragging a bloody trail across the road. Kuro appears beside Keita, speaking in a calm voice that she wasn't a root, as he stared on in shock. Keita couldn't help stop thinking about what Kuro had told him about the doppelganger system. It seemed completely absurd, yet he believes it because of everything that's happened so far. The idea was affecting him. He was getting late to school and wasn't concentrating much in class. One evening, he returns home to find an unexpected visitor. Rummaging in his fridge was Kuro, who finds a cabbage and munches away happily at the leaves. She explains she was starved, and it was Puni who recognized his scent and led her to his home. She passed out outside, and Akane let her in after hearing how Keita had treated her to a bowl of ramen. However, Keita did not welcome her. He demands she left right away because he didn't want to get involved in anything strange again. Kuro puts down the cabbage, apologizes, and runs out the door. Akane tries to stop her but is told to leave too, Keita claiming he already had dinner so she didn't have to cook for him. Left alone in the house again, Keita looks at the bag of groceries and rice balls Akane had brought back with her. Thinking back to how Kuro was, he rushes out to look for her carrying the bag. After looking at several places, he finally finds her. She eats away happily at the rice balls while answering Keita's questions about who she was. She explains once again she was Kuro, a Terra Guardian who was responsible for keeping the balance of existence, and goes into a little more detail about how every human soul is divided into three according to their fate. Their Terra energy can be referred to as their fortune. When two of them meet, the one with the weaker fortune is destroyed due to the rules of the system, and their fortune is returned to the one who possesses the greatest fortune of all. Once the fortune of both weaker subs are absorbed, the master root is complete. Their conversation is interrupted when a group of men surrounds them. They were the tribal ends who were granted powers by the most powerful Terra Guardians, the Lion tribe. Their leader Sagei wasn't pleased that an exiled guardian managed to defeat one of his servants and had decided to go hunt for the prey personally. He had already killed 4 other stray guardians, absorbing their superior Terra energy so that he can reach a higher status. Kuro recognized the exceed abilities he had gained right away but was still no match for him. Keita tries to help by calling the police and as a result, ends up irritating Sagei. Watching Keita get killed, Kuro rushes an attack and quickly escapes with the dead Keita. Reaching a deserted warehouse, Kuro creates a contract with Keita to revive him. An emblem appears on their hands. Sagei finds them and laughs, claiming that Keita will just be a burden for her. He attacks once again. Kuro is overpowered until both she and Keita realizes what Sagei's exceed ability was. A whip created from the wind. As Kuro is smashed into the ground and grabs onto some live wires to electrocute Sagei, the emblems suddenly glow. Keita unleashes a burst of energy and Sagei is beaten by Kuro. Keita wakes up sweating heavily after dreaming about last night's events. He notices the wound on his chest and realizes it was real. Hearing a munching sound, he slides open the door into the living room and finds Kuro sitting there having raw instant noodles for breakfast. It was real after all. Kuro lets Keita know it's best if they stay close until the heart she's given him settles down. The doorbell rings and it was Akane doing the daily visits. Before Keita could stop her, she enters just in time to see Kuro lifting up her clothes innocently. Kuro explains that a contract is formed between a Terra Guardian and a chosen individual when their hearts are exchanged. In Keita's case, she did it to save his life because she felt responsible for what happened. Akane doesn't quite understand, but she decides it was best if Keita went to the hospital to have a look at the wound. Keita wasn't happy at all about what has happened. He shouts at Kuro, telling her to leave before returning inside to his room to get some more rest. Meanwhile, Akane leaves for work and it was time for Keita to go to school too. Despite Kuro's persistence, he warns her to stay at home until he returns at lunchtime. Not long afterwards, two tribal ends break into the apartment to capture Kuro. They knew she had just formed a new contract, so she wouldn't have the strength to fight back. However, Kuro struggles just enough to allow her to escape. She grabs the towel that Keita had used so that Puni could track down Keita. Back at school, Keita had felt every kick and punch Kuro experienced back in his apartment. He rushes out of the classroom quickly to return home only to be stopped by his teacher Subota. Back in the classroom, Keita learns that he had done some research about the doppelganger system after being told about it. He thought it was a marvelous system if it only allowed the ones with the best of fortune to live. It would create the ideal world. Suddenly Kuro bursts into the classroom, panting for air but relieved to find Keita was fine. However, her expression changes when she realizes Keita's teacher was another tribal end. Subota and Kuro break out into a fight with Subota having the upper hand. Kuro is pinned to the ground as her face is smacked mercilessly punch after punch. Keita clutches his heart, unsure of what to do, until Puni barks, signaling him over to a fire extinguisher. Without hesitation, Keita hurries over and grabs it, aiming it at Subota and firing it before he could stop him. Kuro thanks Keita as they run away. However, they couldn't get very far before Subota caught up with them. They had no choice but to fight him. Just before luring Subota away, Kuro explains to Keita they have to perform synchro. Both of them must have the will to fight and defeat their opponent. As Keita follows them, he eventually learns that his teacher had been selling information about his students who could be suitable candidates for creating master roots. He was responsible for his friend Risa Yamada's death and showed no signs of regret. A sudden anger burns inside Keita as he finds out the truth. He ordered Kuro to defeat Subota as their hearts synchronized. This allowed Kuro to defeat Subota with ease, sending him out the window and landing in the school grounds below before two schoolgirls. Akane receives a call from Keita while she is off to work at Asura Bank. She doesn't notice the car that was following her. As she goes about her work, she is approached by a tall, large man who suddenly grabs hold of her hand. He senses a great flow of Terra energy from her. She had not agreed to a contract with anyone yet. A young blonde-haired girl runs up to the man, clinging onto his arm to pull him away, claiming he couldn't help but seeing such a beautiful Japanese woman before walking away. Akane talks to her manager and leaves to meet Keita. The man tells the driver to follow her, to know where that trace of guardian energy on her came from. They soon meet up at a cafe. Keita explains how they had escaped from school after Kuro defeated his teacher. Now that he and Kuro had a contract between them, she asks him to fight with her against her brother. Keita angrily gets up and slams the table, wanting no part in the chaos, and attracts a lot of unnecessary attention even though he had tried to keep Kuro quiet. A woman named Yuki who resembled Akane was getting impatient that her subroute wasn't found yet. She complains to Raian how useless his subordinates. It was getting late. Kuro calmly tries to convince Keita again while Akane was paying for their huge list of food inside. She lets him know the contract can't be undone until the contractor dies, and that both he and the Guardian share the same heart. If either of them didn't trust the other, then there is going to be trouble. However, Keita's attention wasn't with her. He had noticed the car that was following them, and immediately pulls Akane away as she leaves the building. They run but are surrounded by bikers. They were tribal ends, and without Keita's trust, Kuro is no match against them. When Keita and Akane were about to be killed, suddenly a tall, large man named Steiner appears to save them. It appears they were also after Kuro and wasn't going to let anything stand in their way. The bikers were beaten and forced to retreat. Akane thanks them for the help, but Keita stops her. He knew they had other intentions. He punches Steiner for trailing Akane and getting her caught up in the mess too. Punching a Madsatsumatama is declaring a duel. The fight begins between Steiner and Kuro. Kuro appears to have no problems dodging his attacks with her speed and manages to land a few hits on him. However, none of her hits seemed to have any effect. Steiner smirks knowing that she and Keita had just made a contract not too long ago, so her power won't be very high yet. Nevertheless, he doesn't hold back. Fighting back, he pins Kuro to the ground and starts punching her mercilessly as Kuro blocks helplessly. The blonde girl named Excel wasn't worried at all and was sitting on a rail playing games. Seeing this and remembering how Kuro said she will protect him being the contractor, he decides to try and synchro with her again. A small burst of energy reaches Kuro and she manages to repel Steiner off her. She wasn't certain she can win but know her strength will be much greater if they perform synchro. After doing so, Steiner is knocked to the ground by surprise. Kuro turns around happily that they seem to have won. Excel now got up. She walks over to Steiner who was also picking himself up. They didn't expect someone like Keita to manage synchro, but what surprised them the most was that Kuro knew nothing about Exceed. It was a unique powerful move that can be performed once a guardian has made a contract with someone else. Keita recognizes the word when they encounter the tribal ends, but Excel explains they could only mimic the same moves but not possess the same power. The fight wasn't over and Steiner was having fun now. Kuro uses her Exceed, Mega Excel to attack again but ends up being repelled by Excel's shield. Excel wall of power that the thousands possessed. Again, it was something that Kuro seemed clueless about. Excel decides it's time to end the little game and finally synchros with Steiner, allowing him to go all out. He triggers his Exceed, Stampede splitting into multiple copies of himself and begins attacking Kuro again relentlessly. Just as Steiner was about to finish them off, Excel stops him even though he insists on letting the young people know the consequences of fighting against them. There was something she wanted to ask them. She smiles and informs them the fight was for self-defense when they had sensed the anger in them. For now, they will be escorted home and in exchange Excel wants a cup of tea. Back at Akane's apartment, Excel was enjoying some Earl Grey tea Akane had brewed. She may look like a kid but was in fact not one. They begin explaining they were members of a Terra Guardian alliance known as the Noble One. They mainly operated in Europe and were responsible for keeping the balance of Terra energy. Discovering that there were signs of the balance breaking in Japan, they were dispatched to investigate, and that was when they sensed a trace of Guardian presence on Akane, which is why they followed her. In their experience, this usually led them to the source of the problems they were seeking to solve, although this time they were wrong. 7 years ago, their investigators had managed to snap a photo of an incident that occurred on the island of Okinawa and was sure some secret operation was underway there. Recently, some abnormal changes in Terra have also started to occur in Tokyo too. Taking a close look at the photo, Keita recognizes the woman in the picture was his mother. He was sure she died in a traffic accident so it couldn't be her, but remembers the look-alike he had saw on the train. Akane notices the date on the photo taken 6 months ago, which means Maki should still be alive just now. Okinawa was where Keita's mother was born. However, that was all Excel and Steiner were willing to divulge. As they get up to leave, Keita demands to know what he should do if they ever get attacked again. But Excel just smiles, saying they can defend themselves now that they can synchro. She also leaves her email address with Akane should they need to contact her. Later that evening out on the balcony, Kuro apologizes that his mother had to be part of all this. She plans to travel to Okinawa alone to find her brother and also help Keita find out the truth about his mother to make up for all the trouble. Keita looks away and knowing Kuro had no idea how to get there, he wanted to know the truth himself. Keita was now making the preparations for their trip to Okinawa and just before leaving Akane's place to check on his own place and collect some money. As he makes his way there, a red sports car stops alongside him and a tall woman steps out. Thinking she was another tribal end, he immediately has his guard up but learns she was a higher order guardian, Mikami Hauju, who was only after Kuro. He refuses to tell her where she was and tries to run away, but of course, he doesn't get very far before he is grabbed and lifted up into the air by his neck. Suddenly, Mikami realizes something and decides to take him away. Kuro had sensed Keita in trouble. She rushes down and bumps into Akane, who was just returning home. Just as Kuro was explaining that she felt Keita in danger, Akane's phone rings. The woman tells Kuro where they will meet before driving off. Arriving back at her mansion, she sits down at the porch with Keita and explains she was of the Silver Tiger tribe. She just worked for the Lion Tribe for the rewards. She then wonders why Keita decided to create a contract between him and Kuro when he was clearly a sub. Keita was shocked and remembers what happens to subs in the doppelganger system, but there was more. Just as Mikami was going to tell him more, a window lights up and she excuses herself. Meanwhile, Steiner and Excel had raided one of the hideouts the Lion Tribe used to create tribal ends and had discovered a pile of dead guardians they had absorbed. They also find spiritual crystals in the extraction machine Hiyu had been using and realizes this was the way the tribal ends were being mass-produced. Back at the mansion, Mikami's loved one had woken up and noticed they had a rare guest over. She prepares the medicine she received as a reward for helping the Hiyu earlier before returning back to the garden. Kuro had arrived. Seeing Kuro, Keita demands to know why she didn't tell him that he was sub. Mikami steps in and goes on to telling them that a sub eventually dies because the Terra energy they possessed was simply too weak for a guardian to utilize. Synchro and Exceed used up vast amounts of Terra, which results in their body aging at an accelerated rate. Kuro thought she was lying until her lover Shingo appears to confirm what she says. He was only in his 30s yet looked like a very aged old man, and it was a result of creating a contract between him and Mikami 10 years ago when he wanted to become part of her power. However, unlike Keita and Kuro, they had greater trust in each other. Realizing it was the truth, Kuro apologizes to Keita and suddenly gets attacked by Mikami, who claims the Guardians just used humans as tools. She will kill her to undo the contract. They fight with Mikami having the upper hand. Kuro knows she has done wrong but wasn't prepared to kill yet. Keita does nothing and watches until Shingo asks if he was just going to watch his partner Kuro die. Remembering all his friends who had died because of all the doppelganger system, his will fires up and was just in time to give Kuro the power to use her Exceed. However, Mikami and Shingo does the same despite Mikami being hesitant at first, wondering whether he would be able to bear the burden. She decides to trust him and enjoy the old times when no one could ever beat them. Kuro attacks, but they prove to have no effect. Both of them knew they had to use as little Terra energy from their partners as possible or they could die. Timing it just right, Kuro unleashes her Exceed once more but fails to defeat Mikami. Mikami punches back and laughs, thinking they had won. She looks up and finds Shingo thanking her for the happy times they had together. He asks her not to hold grudge towards Keita and Kuro because they had granted him a satisfying end to his life. As Mikami takes Shingo's body to the seaside, she reminds Keita and Kuro they still had a long way to go and the contract between them will only be broken once either of them dies. It was up to them to establish a strong bond and stay alive. On their way to the airport, Akane and Keita come across Kuro's bodyguard Yakumo and find out that she was a princess of the Sacred Lions tribe. He was with one of the master roots that had escaped from the Kaianji Corporation, Ryona Kagure, because they were going to perform some sort of experiment on her. They also learned their chain of convenience stores were being used to find more sub-roots to create master roots. As they wait for their flight, Kuro decides to tell Keita about her past and how her brother Raian had suddenly killed their entire tribe including their mother. Before they're going to Okinawa, Excel give a battle accessories ring to Keita that will only react to the pure terror of Contractory. Keita, Akane and Kuro arrive on Okinawa and spend some time enjoying the island's peaceful environment before finally dropping by his grandfather's home. He didn't know how to explain the photo he had and what has happened so far, but his grandfather doesn't force him to explain and lets them stay. Just as they were going to leave to search for the place where the photo was taken the following day, two guardians, Makana and Kakuma, appear and attack them, thinking they were friends of the Kaianji and were here to destroy their spiritual stone. The misunderstanding is cleared up and Keita learns their Heba tribe were all killed and that they were the only survivors. The Kaianji were gathering master roots to help them seek out the spiritual stones which controlled the balance of Terra energy and were planning to destroy them. The Noble One tracked down Raian, the one responsible for breaking the balance of Terra, and arrive at the Kaianji's head office just as Yuki was complaining how she wanted her sub found soon. They learn that he wants to throw the world into chaos and create a new one but doesn't manage to find who the ruler will be. Despite synchronizing, Steiner wasn't able to hit Raian at all and are almost wiped out by a single blast if it wasn't for Excel's Hexa wall. Meanwhile, Kuraki thinks back to the past about he discovered the doppelganger system and eventually hacked the company's computers before convincing Raian to let him join. However, Raian didn't know he had other plans in store. Later, Keita meets his mother's master root, while Hiyu, one of the lion tribe, catches up with Kuro and Makana. Kakuma has been captured by Raian. He was the key he needed to gain access to the Spirit Stone in the Sacred Land. Meanwhile, Keita could feel Kuro in trouble and was making his way towards the cave she was being tormented by Hiyu. Just as he was about to use the Thousand Ring, Shinobu catches up and pins him to the ground, absorbing his terror again. They learn that she had decided to become a minus root when she learned from Hiyu about the doppelganger system and how it was responsible for all the misfortunes she has been through as a sub. This happens when the master root and the other sub-root is killed and allows her to absorb the Terra energy or fortune from others. This meant that no matter how much she synchroed, she won't lose any life energy. At another place, Kuraki manages to find Yuki's sub Akane. Keita wakes up to find Akane, Kuro and an old friend by his side. He was surprised to find that his classmate Sawamura, who he thought had died long ago in an accident, standing before him. However, Sawamura doesn't answer to the name and says he was now Kuraki working for the Kaianji group. They had arranged for his sub to die so that his disappearance from school wouldn't appear suspicious. Sawamura had been the top student in class and because of that was very popular with the girls, but his cocky attitude meant he irritated many. One day, Keita saved him from being beaten. Kuraki now asked him to join him to fight against Raian's plan so that they can control the doppelganger system and control their own fates to avoid any more tragedies. Kuro was against the idea but says nothing and concentrates on finding his brother instead. Keita and Kuro battle it out with Raian but don't even manage to scratch him. As Keita passes out, Excel, Steiner, Riona and Ikumo also arrive at the scene. Quickly leaving the case, Steiner and Excel are left behind to carry out their mission. A fierce battle ensues as Steiner and Raian fight at their full power. But eventually Raian wins. Excel is taken away from the scene just in time with his stampede technique. As Raian destroyed the sacred stone, he is attacked by Rega, Kuraki's guardian who wanted revenge for the massacre of his Heba people. A burst of Terra energy overflows the island as a wormhole is created through Raian. If you like this video, please subscribe and see you in my next video.